So, oh, you're all set now? So I actually set up today while you were at work. I took some time and I set up, see all these tanks over here, these
Yeah.
8, 13 tanks. That's for dart frogs. I'm going to do dart frogs. Oh my gosh, we're live. Shoot, I didn't
You're
realize
doing
we're
what?
live. I'm doing dart frogs. I had a conversation with Alex earlier and he recommended, and I went to his site and I think it's $800, $900 worth of dart frogs that I just purchased. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, good. I just wanted to make sure. Now, I do that all the time, though. I do ask you after I purchase. So
Little do you know, I get the alert every time you purchase.
that's probably true. Hi, everyone. This is Wally with Spring Gecko.
And Annette.
Thank you for joining us. You're almost. This is habit now. This. You have to do
make
this.
Sure you look good.
I look good. Did you say I look good?
Yeah. Make sure you look good.
I look marvelous. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is going to be a very, very special evening. We have Alex Menke from Frog Daddy today. And if you don't know, how many people have never heard of Alex and Frog Daddy? Raise your hands. I'm gonna look out on the. Okay, so I don't have to do an introduction because everybody has. Oh no, Joe in the back. I see Joe's hand is up. So I am going to have to do a little introduction for Alex, but everybody else knows Alex, so that's pretty cool. And I'm going to introduce Alex in just a second. I do have a couple of announcements, and this is going to be really quick because this is, I don't want to say waste time, but I don't want to take any more time than I possibly can. Real quick announcements. Breeding season here at Spring Gecko is commenced. We have already received lots and lots of gecko eggs, and we've set up other geckos for breeding. Leopard geckos, African fat tails are just now kicking in. Picked a breed all season anyway. So next week we're going to kick back into the long form videos and get a video out for everybody next week. Buy me a coffee. If you don't know about Buy Me a Coffee, check the link in the video description. Last month, I completed 8 consultations. Thank you, everyone that signed up for a consultation. I have 5 coming up real soon in the next probably couple of weeks. You guys are the best. I love these consultations, sitting down and talking reptile shows or finances or breeding a certain animal. We talked to a couple of people about breeding scorpion tails, and that's just a blast for me. We have our membership live stream, our big one for the year. We were hoping to have it in January, and everybody knows that we were a little bit under the weather in December, and January was just a kind of a cleanup month. But we have our big membership live stream coming up, and we had talked earlier, Friday, March 6th. In that live stream, we're going to do our yearly giveaway for anybody that was a member in 2025. And is still a member, obviously. And I'm going to share a new tool that I've been using for years and years. Gina and Brad, if you're in, I gave them the tool, and it sounds like they're using it pretty well. Understand it, right out of the gates. So I'll offer that next week, early next week as well. And there's going to be more details about the live stream coming up early next week. Garage sale. We're going to have in the Buy Me a Coffee live stream, we're going to have a garage sale. And I just think this is going to be a blast. It's things that are brand new that I just never opened the box, either received them from YouTube promotions and just never made it out of the box, or things that I have received that I haven't used at all, or things that are lightly used. We have some really cool t-shirts. We have all kinds of things. So you'll want to be in the Buy Me a Coffee live stream Friday for that. And what we'll do is we'll sell some items. It's going to be a regular garage sale. And we'll do maybe some bidding, and all the proceeds. We're going to start everything out at, what did we say, $5 or $6? $6. We're going to start everything out at $6.
And that's in the Buy Me the Coffee?
That's in the Buy Me a Coffee giveaway.
Regular live.
And what we're going to do is all the proceeds then will go to US Ark. Cool stuff. And then we have a reptile show Sunday, don't we?
And better not have any snow.
We're going up to Green Bay, which is what, a 2-hour drive up.
Mhm.
That's not too bad, but that's Sunday from for the Scaled Up Expo show. Oh my gosh. What can I say about Alex? So we have one person that doesn't know Alex. And I'm kind of joking here because I think everybody pretty much knows Alex and knows Frog Daddy because they're a very, very, very established business. And I hope everybody, Nanette, if you're watching comments, let me
No, I'm
know
not
if
watching
I'm
comments.
skipping something and not
I'm on
seeing
another
something.
whole thing here. I'm doing some work.
Oh, you're doing work. So Frog Daddy is more than just frogs. And if you don't know that, you have to go to their page. Check out Frog Daddy. The link, Frank, I'm sure, is going to share the link to Frog Daddy here in a second. If he hasn't already, bioactive, oh my gosh, all kinds of things. I think, and correct me, Alex, when you come on, Frog Daddy has been a business for 5 years, a little bit more than that, maybe. And I consider Alex, if not the frog expert, one of the top 2 or 3 frog experts in the United States, if at least. And what's cool about Alex is that he has a scientific background. So I'm just the opposite. I kind of, shoot from my hip and try things out. And I really don't I do the research. But what's really cool is to listen to somebody that has the scientific information behind them. And what I'll do then in my research is go, well, you have to know what you're doing because you have the background in making these kinds of decisions and moving forward with your hobby. And these are the types of people that I'll listen to. We're going to talk to Alex about fruit flies tonight, but I want him to come on and just share a little bit about where Frog Daddy is right now. I have all kinds of stats here. 10,000 foot facility and store. I hope I'm right. And correct me, tell me how many things I get wrong here, Alex. 318 by 18 by 24 enclosures.
What?
Right. Website was established in 2017. What I like about Frog Daddy is their business model. And I say this, I think in nauseam at every live stream that we do. And if you're starting a business in reptiles or whatever it is, diversify. It would be not a good thing to go into business and say, okay, I'm doing ball pythons, unless you're really niching down and really specializing. And even that's going to be a problem. Alex is diversified. And I don't know if there's anybody else. Matt Park would be another person I would put up right here with Alex as far as how they've grown their business and kind of provided the hobbyists with everything they need in a one-stop shop. Very admirable. I can't talk about Alex though, and this is the easy part. Alex is known for his customer service, number one, above and beyond everything else. So we talked about the scientific, we talked about the business accolades, but customer service focused, and probably one of the hardest workers in the hobby. I know from talking to other people that he's at a shop working on things 60, 70 hours a week. I hope that's gone down recently. He also has a huge dedication to the community, obviously his business, and most important, last but certainly not least, is his animals. I heard recently, and the number's probably gone up, and this is why we have Alex on the show tonight.
I think Alex left.
Yeah, I probably did. Alex,
The show was over already.
I could spend 2 hours and watching some interviews today with Alex and other interviewers. I feel like I know him very, very well, but we're going to focus, and this is crazy, folks. We're going to focus on fruit flies. Why? We should be talking to Alex and his business in dart fox, but we're going to focus on fruit flies because there's a lot of reasons. And we're going to talk about those in just a second. Okay, Alex, how many things did I get wrong here?
Oh, he's still here.
Thanks for joining us.
Here. Hello.
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, sure. Not much did you get wrong. The amount of enclosures is a little higher, but the amount of 18-24s is lower. So you did good on that. But we have over 400 enclosures now total. We have 179 localities of dart frogs. We are officially the biggest in the world, locality-wise. We do have the highest amount. The flagship on that is the Ufaga Pomeilio, of course. So the ones that care for their babies. We have 54 localities of those. There's 71 recognized localities total, some of which are not in the United States anymore. But that's what we do for our conservation efforts. 10,000 square foot facility. That's a check. That's what we have. We've been in business for about 8 years, but you were right on the website. So 2017, we became a business in 2018. So I guess that's going on 8. It's already 2026. My God.
Right. We blinked and all of a sudden it's 10 years.
I know, it's crazy. So just happy to be here. Very pleased with the long laundry list of. I mean, that's too much. I try my best, and I appreciate you saying all those very positive things about me. Thanks.
It's not an issue at all. It's number one, well deserved, and I also feel a little bit neglectful for not mentioning all of your conservation work that you've been doing in recent years, and that's just above and beyond. So we all think about, and I worked tropical fish a long time ago, and the whole subject with the Lake Victoria and introducing fish back into the wild, there's just pipe dreams in everybody's mind. They thought that was impossible, but you're doing things that matter, and you're doing things that are going to change the hobby and change dart frogs,
I hope so.
Obviously good. You want to talk about that for a second?
Sure, I can go into it a little bit. So we have the Pomeilio Project, which is my 501c3 nonprofit organization. It was established in, I guess, like mid 2025 was the official start, although the website has not opened to the public yet. Still working my ways through the navigation of having a nonprofit inside of a for-profit. It's very difficult tax-wise. So I'm still navigating that before I open anything like donations or any kind of product or merchandise or anything at all. I want to make sure all my ducks are in a row in a legal standpoint. But from a business legal standpoint, it's doing really well. We have 195. We will have 195 dedicated enclosures to Ufaga Pomeilio. And those will house, the 54 localities that we currently have. And hopefully we'll be able to import some from Europe and maybe even from Panama, sustainably, of course. Like, it has to be sustainable. It has to be legal. We don't want any washed frogs that get washed in Europe and shipped over illegal. I mean, let's be real, right? So
yes.
we want to do things the right way. We want to do things the legal way. And so that may take years, right? We know Panama's not open right now. It could be a while. So we want to eventually get boots on the ground over there, get some breeding facilities going. That's all in the pipeline, but it's still in its infancy. So right now what we can do is preserve the genetics that we already have. So that's what we're trying to do now. Build up our stock, build up our breeders, restrict selling for now. We've restricted selling for almost 3 years. We've had very restricted sales. If any of you are into frogs, my stuff's out of stock a lot. And that's kind of why I've been holding a lot of stuff back to make sure that we are on track to preserve the hobby for decades to come, to make sure that everyone has accessibility to these frogs, to learn about them, to enjoy them, and that we don't have to take from the wild. And we have enough outcrosses that we can create a gene bank that is sustainable, like I said, for generations.
I just can't imagine this project with the business that you're running. And I know that it's
hard.
pretty much you and a couple of other people. And I think that's part-time as well. And throwing this in and a website and your online order shipping. It's a lot.
It's a
It's a
lot.
lot
Yeah,
to handle.
I worked 74 hours in-house last week. That does not count everything I did outside. So usually it's about 60 to 80 hours a week still. I have been trying to get it down, but it's just been impossible with the growth. So,
But the thing is that you love your manager, right?
yeah, I mean, I do miss my wife. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you could say that.
I think anybody that has taken that big step, and it's a huge step, to move their hobby into a business, and leave the business world, that's a huge step. But it also, it's such a gratifying kind of thing to be your own boss and make your own decisions and feel like you control, your destiny. So
Right.
again, hats off to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And again, we could talk 2 hours on dart frogs, and I'd love, I know your time is valuable, and I'd love to have you on at some point to talk dart frogs, something that I know like this much about.
And we'll know this much about
And then that says I don't.
Okay, I know
frogs.
this much about like everything else, so it's fine.
But I know this much about fruit flies.
I do. For better or worse, man. I got thrust into that position. But I do. I know a lot about fruit flies. So,
And I know this is such a detailed kind of subject, and somebody's going to go, you had Alex on and you talked about fruit flies. What the heck, Wally? That's how stupid of you. And I feel, but you know what? I don't think I feel like people buy fruit flies, feed, and then, oh my gosh, I better go run to the store again and buy some more fruit flies or reptile show or whatever. And that's a crime. I really think that,
agreed.
fruit flies are a great do-it-yourself thing that you can kind of, save a ton of money, especially if you're doing, well, let's talk about it. Dart frogs. I depend on fruit flies as a staple for some of my teeny tiny geckos. Fish, mantids, tarantulas, spiders, jumping spiders.
Spiders. Yep. That's a big.
Anybody else? Right. Anybody else know another pet that fruit flies are a key part of their feeding schedule? Why are fruit flies so? I want to say popular, but I don't think they're popular. Why are they such a necessity to especially dart frogs, but other pets as well? Why do you think?
I do believe they're one of the. I mean, obviously for dart frogs, we can start there. We can say that they are the staple feeder. So if you want to keep things that are, I mean, we say microphagous, but they're not truly microphagous. Those things are things like whales and stuff. But in a colloquial sense, we can say that dart frogs are microphagous. They eat small prey items. So you really can't, I mean, you can keep them without doing flies, but it's very hard. It's just a lot easier to do flies. And so another reason why I think flies are very popular is just because they allow you to keep and breed a lot of animals effectively. So like your micro geckos, right? A lot of things come out very, very small as metamorphs. So if you're not doing like pinhead crickets, if you're not breeding your own crickets, it's very hard to find a feeder item that's going to fit the bill on those lower metamorph sizes. So
Yep. Yes.
And fruit flies are so easy to breed. So it's like not everybody can breed crickets very well because they're subject to a lot of different variables. Right. I know. Me too. I'm terrible. But fruit flies are pretty, I mean, there are some caveats. We'll get into it, right? But
yeah.
for the most part, we can say they are an easier feed item, especially with kits. There's kits everywhere, right? Josh's Frogs, Any Herp, me, several other businesses have kits. They make it easy. And then there's homemade recipes all over the internet, all over AI. I mean, not that I'm advocating for AI, but I'm just saying it's out there, right? So it's like cricket breeding is protected IP. There's a lot that goes into it, like industrial level operations. you could pay a pretty penny for the IP for that because it is protected knowledge. Whereas fruit flies, I mean, it's you can't because it's so easy to do. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of animals that benefit from it, like you already stated. There's a lot of small, like jumping spiders. I mean, what else are you going to feed these animals? So having fruit flies as a feeder item has allowed the exotic animal industry to have more and more options, especially in terms of invertebrates and micro geckos and dart frogs, to enter this market and be able to be fed sustainably and easily.
And I think that there's a lot of people that overlook the value of fruit flies. I kept fish for many, many years before I started using, right? Before I started using fruit flies, and it was like, oh, this is so soft body. You know, it's not like bean beetles or something like that. Soft body, easy to breed. You know, just like that. As long as you're doing it right, and we're gonna, yeah, and you know. And they can't bite the animals. So tiny for small animals. So there's so many values of the fruit flies. Now, again, you know, to take your point, what other feeder food is there out there that equates to a fruit fly? I've been doing fire brats recently, and that works out really well. But there's differences there. Fire brats are super quick, and some of the geckos. Some of my geckos just don't want to chase something running around like that.
Right.
My banded geckos just love a fruit fly walking in front of them and gobbling it down. Some of the pachydaculus are very fast and they'll chase down a fire brat, but the bandits don't want to chase things down. They want something walking in front of them. So there's so many good things about fruit flies. To cultivate fruit flies, there's really only, I'm looking at my notes here, there's really only 4 things, unless you can come up with something else.
I'll let you know.
Okay. The cup in the top, the medium or the food, climbing material, and the fruit flies themselves.
You got it.
Fair enough?
Simple.
And I'd like to go through, and I'd mentioned this in some of my posts, that this is going to be very detailed, and I have a lot of questions. And it sounds like, oh, it's so mundane. But I think there's advantages and disadvantages of doing a fruit fly culture the right way and producing more fruit flies and having them healthier as well, especially for your animals. When we talk about the container, 99.99% of everybody uses the, 32 ounce?
32 ounce deli cups. Yeah. Oh, I can go into everything. You want me to go item by item? I can tell you all about it, the nuances of every material, the thickness of the plastic. I mean, we can do it. So you let me know.
I love it. And before we do, just real quick, crazy bugs and pods. I just want to mention Corey. I don't know anybody in the hobby that I've worked with that I can walk up to their table and get a fruit fly culture that has 14 bazillion fruit flies already established in it that I can feed out my whole gecko room within 1 cup, just like right now. So thank you very much, Corey, for doing everything that you do. Sorry, Nanette, I just wanted to bounce down real quick. Go ahead.
I'm just starring questions.
There you go.
Later.
We're going to come back to some if we haven't covered them. We're going to talk about containers. So the 32 ounce, I call it the fruit fly cup, and that's what it is. Are there other containers that people could use, that should use, that might be used?
Sure. Yeah, so we can go into it. Typically, your 32 ounce deli cup is going to be your standard fruit fly cup, right? So we have it's about 5.5, 6 inches tall. You want something that's decently thick plastic wise. So you want something that's crush proof. So usually what people will use is the 32 ounce microwavable deli containers. There's several different resources for you guys to get those. A lot of restaurant supply companies will have these containers for microwavable, like soups, macaroni and cheese, stuff like that. But usually you want the microwavable ones because they're a little bit thicker. So The reason you want thicker plastic is if you're shipping them like we do, you want to make sure they're more or less crush proof, or crush resistant would be the better term. There's also heavy duty 32 ounce, but they don't always fit the industry standard insect cups or insect lids, sorry, that are typically manufactured in the United States. So we usually go with like Choice or Placon or Fabri-Kal. All those companies make quality cups, but you do want a thicker cup. So if you slam it down on the table and it crushes, then you know you need a stronger cup. There are also 24 or 25 ounce that have worked for a lot of people. And in the past, I know there's certain companies that would sell the 25 or 24, I can't remember, ounce cup because it saved space in the shipping. So for like wholesale operations and things like that, you get a pretty good 70 to 80% total yield that you would get on a 32. And a lot of pet stores don't need those massive, massive amounts of flies because they're selling to people that are, either feeding 1 or 2 frogs, or they're feeding, like, again, geckos, mantids, fish, something that's a smaller amount. Like Petco has their vial cultures, which, again, I'm not going to talk shit on any company, but I mean, good Lord, right? We get like 20 or 30 flies out of those. But you can see there's bigger containers and they're a little bit more stout. Those are usually 24 or 25s. Now, is a company that is in Petco and PetSmart, I think, in some parts of the United States, that uses 16s. The 16s, you get significantly less yield. I don't know what it is. I think it's the moisture gradient, that you just can't get a very good moisture gradient with the 16 ounce. You really need a 24 or 25 or a 32 to get that good microclimate that flies need to not only breed or not only develop in the media, but also to pupate. That's a really important thing. So that's kind of the hardcore cup analysis. But if you want to know more about that, just let me know.
I think those are fantastic facts. That's something that I never thought about. This is standard, but I have seen the smaller ones. But like you were saying, the moisture, to try to maintain the right precise moisture content to allow the larvae to succeed is a lot harder. It's just like, keeping fish, obviously, or keeping any other animal.
Harder to maintain. Yep.
Harder to maintain and easy to imbalance. Something could go wrong just like that.
Right.
Bigger, slower it is to have mistakes. Great points. So too big, maybe. Is there a cup that's too big? Well, this just seems right to most people. Do you ever use like the jumbo, 64 gallon?
I've seen people do it, I swear. But I will tell you what happens is there is a secret sauce, right? There's a medium, there's a happy balance. There's a reason. So if you do like the milk jug, there's a guy, I can't remember. The guy is anonymous because he comes up every 3 or 4 years. Why do we use the small containers? I'm culturing it in a gallon jug. And the thing is, the media, even with congealing agents, which we can talk about, congealing agents, thickening agents, that kind of stuff. If you put the volume, the surface area, and the volume of that media in that large of a container, gravity will impact it in a stronger way. Okay, so you have less surface area, more volume. It's going to cause some problems with sloshing over time, things like that. So even if you have a giant container, you have potential for culture failure due to the media not being able to stick to the bottom. The 32 ounces are really nice because they have, a smaller bottom to where you have this good surface area, good surface tension, and you don't have so much volume that the media is just sloshing around everywhere. So you have to think about that. And a lot of people don't. They're like, oh, bigger's better. I can just get a giant jug and just fill it with flies, and then I'll just get this giant boom. And it doesn't always work that way. And it can cause crashes too, because a lot of jugs aren't going to have that ventilation, that perfect ventilation, which we'll talk about in the lid section, which I'm sure we're getting to next. In milk jugs, you got to create your own lid. Oh, it may not have enough ventilation. And then you have this giant container with all these flies. They're producing CO2 and they gas themselves. And there's not enough moisture. Moisture can't escape fast enough. So again, this nice gradient that we've established over the hobby over 15, 20 years time, those 32-ounce containers just work best. They are the best Goldilocks zone thing to culture your flies in. I've tried almost everything, I promise. There is no secret to like getting a giant container and just being the lord of the flies. The trick is to have multiple 32-ounce containers, and that's your best bet, because then if one fails, you got a couple more. So always best to create multiple iterations at the same time. You have some excess stock rather than just pouring all that media into one jug and then saying, oh, I hope this works. Don't do that.
But Alex, and correct this number if I'm wrong, you're making 250 cups every single week?
Way more than that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
We make about 1,200 to 1,300 cultures a week.
A week?
A week. Yes. You heard that right. Yeah. So every 3 days. So we basically have every 3 days we make about 232, because we fit 21. I don't know if it's 232 anymore, but it's close. We use trays that are, which I can, again, I can show you guys all this stuff, but we use trays that fit 21 in a tray. So we do it in iterations of 21. I think we are at 232 every 3 days, or every 2 days. Sorry. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we make cultures, and then we make wholesale on Sunday. So it comes out to about 1.2 to 1.3. It depends on our necessities. Yeah. So we don't use all those. We sell a lot of them, of course.
Oh, sure. That makes sense. And Nanette's asking, how long does it take for you to just manage fruit flies?
What do you mean by that? Like
set them up.
Okay. So like making them takes about, it depends about, it's about 4 to 5 hours. Generally speaking, but it doesn't take that long to just make them, right? Like if I'm making cultures, it takes me about an hour to make 100 seeded, fully seeded, fully stocked. So it's only a few hours, right? So, but then we do a lot of other stuff. So we do rotations. So we have to rotate everything in my fly tent. We're building the fly lab right now. So it's like this giant air contained sterile laboratory conditions. Yeah. So it's a whole thing. We're not done with it yet. So I'll just tell it like it is now. But we have rotations, right? So we have like thousands and thousands and thousands of flies at any given time. So you have to rotate the bins because we have fresh all the way around to producing on the other side of the tent. So we have to do rotations. We have to do checks. So we have QC checks. You check for mites. We check for mold. We check for a lot of things like that. Right now we have mold issues, and that's why we're doing the fly lab, because the major Excelsior companies right now are dealing with a lot of mold spores. We're seeing a lot more mold in these fly cultures. So we're trying alternative methods and things that we've never had to do until 2025, which I'm not going to get into that. Your listeners don't need to know all that, but it's wild. So we do QC checks, we do rotations, we do pulling, right? So the day's orders, we do pulling for orders. Okay, which cultures are going to go to customers, which cultures don't need to go to customers. We have to pull for our stock. So we have to take for our feeders. So we have probably 600 on the wall just over there to feed our army of frogs here. But yeah, so it's a lot, right? So you got to analyze all the cultures, look through them, because we want to make sure we're giving the best to our customers. So we have to make general assessment. So it's not really, because you did ask, it's not really just making the cultures.
Yeah.
It's doing everything else.
Can you hand me one of the tops? I think I have the tops in there.
I'm so sorry. I should have brought all my stuff over.
No,
here.
You're fine. This is cool. I get to show and tell a little bit, so that's fun for me. I didn't even think about the rotations that you have to do.
No.
When I thought about making, I thought making, and
Right.
this goes in here and this, and then the top goes on, but you're
Oh yeah,
rotating because
it's
of
a
weeks.
whole. Yeah, our old table holds 200 at a time. It's an 8x4 table. Now we've obviously upgraded to stainless steel because it'll be in a lab. And we built the lab and we're like, damn, we can't fit an 8x4 stainless steel. So I had two, they're like $1,300 a piece. And I'm like, shit, what are we gonna do with these tables? They don't fit in the tents. And I'm like hitting myself in the head because I'm a math guy and I didn't do the math. So anywho, but yeah, we have like, I think our table right now does like 90. So we'll have 90 out at a time and we'll, be rotating the lids out to make sure no flyers get in there. We have a lot of SOPs and parameters to make sure our cultures are continually decent quality, right? So anywho, yeah.
Yes. Before I talk about tops, I do want to ask you. Whoops, I think we're back. Before I talk about tops, I wanted to ask you: do you ever reuse your containers? Do you ever take them to the sink and wash them down and reuse them? No.
I wish we did. The problem is that at the scale we are at, that is the only plastic actually in our whole facility. It's good that you brought it up because I want to be transparent. So we have a Green Go movement that we do. You guys can find that information under the information tab. We actually recycle all plastics here besides those cups. We do all the lids. We recycle all the lids and wash them until the fabric. We have to do QC checks on the fabric because when we're scrubbing them, you have to make sure that there's no holes, right? Because we don't want that to go to a customer. And then the wholesale that we supply to some of our wholesalers, we use all new material just because it's kind of a standard industry practice that if you're supplying a store, you need to do due diligence with that. But everything else, our 4-ounce, 8-ounce, any drams or film canisters that we use for our dart frogs, everything gets washed and recycled here. We have an entire space dedicated for washing plastics and drying them and then redistributing them to everywhere else. So we really try. The cups are just like, unless you have an industrial dishwasher, at the number that we're making every week, we just can't do it. That's the only thing we throw away.
12 hours of washing cups.
Oh yeah,
just washing cups.
Even that, water too, and the I don't know where we'd put all the material because we have solid waste here, but our trash cans, I'd worry about the solid waste removal being open instead. So it's like it's not necessarily a biohazard, but it's like it does skate the. You want to contain it, and I feel like the slop would be hard to contain even in trash bags. It gets so heavy, right? Because you'd have to be washing them out, and you can't drain that down the sink because there's Excelsior fragments, so your plumbing would get screwed up, and it's a nightmare, man. I've really wrapped my head for probably 5-6 years to try and figure out how I can recycle those cups. But it is hard. It is hard, and it's one of the things that we need to find a solution for the environment.
It's hard because everybody has resource, constraints. We have resource constraints as far as time. Time is the most valuable.
Yeah.
I still wash them out, but what I'll do is
You guys should. You guys, if you can, you should. You absolutely should. And I wouldn't judge you for not, but I'm just saying. Yeah.
I throw them up on the shelf. They're done. I throw them up on a shelf, and there's space. There's a resource, but I let them dry out. And then once they're dried out, I take the Excelsior and I grind it a little bit, throw it out, and then I put the water in the cup and let it soak for a day, and then come back.
Yes,
but that's a lot of work.
Is great for compost, guys, too. If you are into composting, the material maybe not so much, but that old Excelsior, man, you can cut it from the media, ball it up, and throw it in the compost pile. It's great compost material because molds love it. So, right? Yeah. But,
Brad, we're going to talk about that in just a second. I want to get back to Shane's question here that I just lost, unfortunately. Oh, here it is. Let's talk about lids. Shane is asking, some lids are holes and some fine mesh. What is the best?
Mesh. Fine mesh. Now, do you have the fabric waffle lid pattern there.
We'll see
Excellent.
if the
My
camera
man.
catches
He's
that.
using the right stuff. Guys,
Yeah.
you want the fabric waffle lids. The reason is there are circular ones that have little circles. Those are very thin across the edges. If you see that that lid that he was holding up there, the reason that we really like them is because the plastic overlaps the mesh in a gradient that prevents breakage and large holes from forming over time. So yeah, we can reuse those more than we can reuse the ones. I don't know if you guys have seen, they have mesh, but they're like the circle, they have like large circle holes.
Yes.
We've found that over time those let out too much humidity, and they also do fray a little bit over time just due to the lack of reinforcement. The grid pattern is what really makes your humidity gradient very well established, as well as not breaking down as fast. So those are the best lids. I get, I know, I mean, I don't care. I'm very transparent with my company. We get a lot of our stuff from TSK Supply. TSK has great fabric
TSK.
waffle lids. Yeah, you guys go and support them. They're a great company. Yeah, so those are the best lids for fruit fly culturing, hands down. The ones with holes in them are not good. The reason being, yes, they have the best humidity retention. The problem is the holes allow for the fruit fly butts to touch. And I'm not kidding you guys, they can mate through the lid. So the female will put the abdomen, yeah, and they'll mate right through the lid, and then that's how you get flyers. And you get those black, what are they? They're
Fungus gnats.
yeah, well, they're akin to that. They're some kind of oh my god, I really should have come prepared. But anyway, you get you can get pests inside the containers because those holes are big enough for certain insects to fly in. You guys do not want to be using those.
I never thought about if it's not fine enough that you could, my thought is I don't want anything to get out. I don't want my fruit flies all over the house.
Get in either.
I don't want anything getting in either and spoiling my cultures. And I've had that happen. Oh my gosh, my culture just started flying. Why did that happen? I've been using this culture for weeks, and then all of a sudden I have flyers.
Yeah, Frank's got is that the name of the fly?
Yeah, there you go. Pharid flies?
Forward flies, yeah.
Forward
flies are one. They're not what I was talking about, but forward flies, absolutely. Those are like flesh flies. They get in isopod cultures all the time. If you guys are using like heavy protein and then you have like open tops, they can easily infest your cultures. And they have huge maggots similar to Heidi. So they'll really put your culture down. It's pretty nasty, and they fly. They're full flighted. So they not good for your house.
Ouch. And folks, we're going to get to the fruit flies and other really key ingredients here, but I want to take this step by step. And I want to mention one more thing with the tops. I think I heard you say we don't reuse, but we do wash. Is that correct?
Yeah, we reuse the lids. So we reuse everything in the facility except our 32-ounce deli cups that we use for fruit flies explicitly. We reuse all the other 32-ounce deli cups we don't use for fruit flies and all other plastics.
How many times will you reuse a lid? I'm not saying we'll use it 4 times or 6 or what, but about how many times do you rewash? So
typically we reuse them for about, it depends. It's let me take that out. It's really until there's degradation, right? So until you have little micro holes forming. So we'll look real quick, and then we'll see if there's advanced degradation or even a chance that there's going to be a hole in the culture. We can't do that, right? So sometimes even out of the box, they'll have like the perforation will be a little thin, and we have to do QC checks on all those. So we probably 2 or 3 times, maybe 4, but I couldn't know a number off the top of my head because again, we're doing batches of like 200-300 at a time. So I think we're about the same 4 or 5 times, and then it's like, it gets warped too over time. Sometimes the plastic will actually warp due to like scrubbing and then constantly pressing and tearing off. Sometimes that gets degraded, and then your line that you rely it to snap on. Sometimes that plastic gets degraded and they actually won't snap on very well anymore. So there's a lot of little things that you just never think about.
There are. You talked about quality assurance, quality checks, but also watch the edges to make sure that, it's not off center, that you don't have, part of it over here and it's overlapping, so that you actually have holes over here too. It's something to check. Yeah. I've got to mention just real quick, reusing. The one thing that you don't want to do when you reuse is put your tops down in your stationary sink and then turn your jet on full steam and wash them off.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. And then don't not notice that you have created holes, so that when you use them for your fruit flies, you get like 6 flies in there, and it's like, why didn't they breed? And all of a sudden you know why they didn't. You don't have them in there.
Yeah.
So we covered tops. Let's talk about this stuff right here, the climbing material. And I don't know a better word to use than climbing material.
Surface area. Yeah. It's kind of got not a lot of names, because it can be a lot of materials, right? So we can go through each one. We start with coffee filters. That's fine. So those are coffee filters. So some people love coffee filters. They are typically a good good surface area expander to use. So the benefits of coffee filters are going to be, 1, they're cheap, right? You can buy a bajillion of them and they're super cheap. 2, they hold up reasonably well. I would say their durability is about 50 to 80%, right? So they're not perfect. They're not going to give you Excelsior stability, but they're also a little bit more resistant to mold because they're highly processed. And right now that matters, because a lot of like I said, those big Excelsior companies, there's a couple that supply the entire United States, are having issues with mold. So we like coffee filters in that way. If you use it with a really wet media, like a wet set media is what I like to call it, which is a lot of ours. If you don't wait long enough and you put the coffee filter in too fast, it can wick too much of the moisture and then collapse the filter. So it's not always the best with our media, but a lot of the other medias that are sold commercially, it's a very viable option, because like I said, they're going to be economically sustainable for you guys. They're also compostable. So again, if you're reusing any of this material or you're recycling this material in any sense of the word, they're a very good option. And yeah, I mean, I would say that they are best for melanogaster, which are these small fruit flies. The Hydei, you can use them, but sometimes you need to double or even triple up on the coffee filters, because they are going to not only just eat through it, but they create so much waste, and they're a wetter species, and we can get into that too if we have time. But they will make the coffee filters kind of collapse at the late stage. So you guys want to make sure that you're using enough material. And I would say this, more is usually better in the sense of coffee filters. You can use 2 or 3 even in cultures and still get very good yields, and then you'll have more structural support. But you do need to find what works for you, because like I say, with fruit fly production, different things work for different people in different houses in different places. So it's a multi-stage thing. It's about ambient humidity. It's about outdoor and indoor temperature fluctuations with your house. Even if you keep your house at 72 degrees and everything's dialed in, man, it doesn't matter. Sometimes the weather outside can impact your production.
Yes. One of the key takeaways for me from that discussion was the amount, and I used coffee filters for my last, I have no reason why I did this, but I used coffee filters for my last batch, and you can see how far it's dropped. It's dropped at least 1.5 inches, 2 inches here, because it's absorbed all of the medium. I probably made my medium for the Hydei a little bit damper, and it's just sank right down, probably because of the weight of the fruit flies as well. So we've got coffee filters cheap, but there's some issues with the absorption. Do you have Excelsior, Lynette? Do you have that bag or do you have it? So I want to mention just real quick too. No, please don't dump it out.
Oh,
Coffee filter's a little cleaner.
There you go.
The little knitting, I'm making so much noise here.
Knitting.
The knitting, the plastic
all that plastic
Yeah,
weave and
plastic
stuff.
mesh we can talk about.
mesh.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
So there's a couple different types of commercially available plastic netting or mesh materials that have been used. Some can be found on Uline, others can be found at craft stores. It really depends. You want to get something semi-rigid. So you want something with structural integrity. Usually those are the ones that you cut, but not necessarily, right? So you have some that are a little more flexible, a little more pliable. I find that the more rigid structures work a little bit better. Just because, again, they're holding up to the high humidity that's in the fruit fly cultures. They're easier to cut and then stage. Some people twine them together. Some people don't. Sometimes you can just kind of like wrap them in a corkscrew. It really depends. I haven't seen production issues with them. Of course, they're super resistant to mold. So if you guys are having mold issues, plastic is great because you're not going to get mold. But I can tell also that, you're not going to have anything colonized. You're not going to have any yeasts or anything beneficial colonizing on that plastic. Typically, you'll get your beneficial bacterias, but typically it's not enough to make a good difference. Your fruit fly cultures will not benefit from it for anything besides surface area, right? And that is the key that we're trying to do, but you won't get extra benefits that Excelsior or even coffee filters can provide. So plastic, while it's good, it's also very expensive. And of course, it's more plastic. So we have to understand that our environmental impact's a little higher. Of course, you and me, we're not doing much. The megacorps are probably to blame for a lot of the plastic, but we all need to do our due diligence because in numbers, we matter. So everything you guys do does matter. And that's something that, if you have a compost pile, that Excelsior and that those coffee filters are going to be great. So there are other options.
When I first started out, I thought, this is probably 15, 16, 18 years ago, I thought, I'm going to save money because I'll reuse these plastic mesh things. And I did that about 2 or 3 times.
And then you get tired of it and you toss it out.
This sucks. This absolutely sucks trying to wash this. So I immediately went over to Excelsior. And if you guys don't know what Excelsior is, Brad is doing some 3D printing. That sounds really cool. Excelsior is this like wooden shavings. I'm going to try to pull some out and make a mess here. But it's this wooden kind of stuff, and it's just all over my desk now. And then you put your medium in and my keyboard, and then you put it right on top, just like you're doing the coffee filters, and then they crawl all in that stuff. So I think my feeling is more surface area, less absorption. I feel like they're easier to use. It's easier to use, except that here's the problem with Excelsior. You make a mess.
It's terrible.
It's not that big of a
But
mess.
it's not that big. We use a big, like a 50 or 60 quart tub, and we make our, we put it in there. So it's not that bad.
Right. Yeah. So Excelsior is
behind me.
Definitely a preferred choice. It's gonna get you guys the best yield, hands down. I've done, like I said, again, you don't have to listen to me for anything, but I know my flies, and I will tell you, Excelsior day in, day out is going to be the most stable, the most productive surface area enhancer you can use. However, it does have its drawbacks, right? So we'll start with the pros. Excelsior is an extruded aspen product, so it's got various thicknesses, but most people use a fine cut Excelsior. One thing that it's good with is it's not super cheap, but it's also not super expensive. So you can make a little bit go a long way. Second good thing is it's biodegradable. And the key thing is it's completely renewable. It is a renewable resource, and it is not cut from primary forest. It's not cut from primary tree. So you're getting a regenerative practice. That's always best, right? The third best thing is the surface area you get from Excelsior will not be able to be beaten by any plastic or any coffee filter or paper plates or anything else that you can use. Excelsior is king when it comes to surface area. It has a lot of microclimates that it's established in. So as the culture gets too hot or too cold, the flies will navigate through the Excelsior column, and it will help balance the humidity and the temperature of the cultures. So it's multifaceted why Excelsior is the best, or the dedicated option for mass fruit fly production. The other thing is it helps congeal with the media. Any herp will tell you don't push it in. I tell you to push it in.
Yeah.
There's no two ways to skin a cat, but or I had that backwards, I think. But regardless, there are two. Anyway,
I'll change that in post editing.
Thank you. Okay, so anywho, if you guys get the Excelsior and you push it in, it does help keep the media in place, and it also wicks extra moisture so that when your especially hidey eyes start dissolving that media, because what flies do is they'll eat it and they'll basically spit all over what they're about to eat, and they liquefy it, because flies they basically suck up all their food. They don't chew, they don't have anything to digest powders or anything like that. That's why you have to wet the media. And we'll talk about media next, but the media basically gets spit on 100 times, and then they poop their larva basically in there, and then they rotate that media. And as that media is rotating, it's getting wetter and wetter and wetter. So something has to keep it in place, or it's a sloshy mess. So besides the ingredients you guys are using for media, something to consider is the Excelsior. Having the Excelsior in there wicks moisture, but at a consistent rate, so that it's not like coffee filters where it wicks all the way through quickly and then collapses. Excelsior will maintain its shape. So it's a beautiful product. I can't speak too highly of it. The downsides are severe. It is the messiest thing since anything has ever been a mess. We'll put it that way. It's a plume of, and you breathe it in, it causes cancer. It's terrible, right? You don't want wood fibers in your lungs. So I recommend you guys wearing dust masks, PPE equipment. All of our employees, when they're dealing with Excelsior, they're required to wear PPE. Because working with sawdust, working with wood fibers that are aerosolized is very dangerous for your health over time. And then besides that, it gets messy, right? So it's everywhere. You guys got to clean it up. The biggest thing is it harbors mold. It is a superconductor for mold. It's it's spongy. The fiber is spongy. So it's great for wicking moisture. It's great for stabilizing moisture gradients, but it's moldy. So you guys could consider that that's a downside. Now, mold and Excelsior in fruit fly production is usually not a big deal for production. Usually the flies and bacteria in the culture will eventually neutralize the mold. Typically, not always though. On the back end, you can always get heavy mold developing. It depends on the types. There's a lot of different types, and we won't go into that, but you want to make sure you're still getting good production. So if you guys are seeing that you're using Excelsior and you're like, wow, I'm just not getting good production because there's all this mold in it, you may want to try something else that works for you. But I do know here that even with the mold that we're having, we have crazy booms. So it's just, again, Excelsior is king. When you're looking to feed your animal, you guys need to be focused on, is this producing for me? Because the idea is like, oh, my culture is not mold free, or it has mites or something like that, which are way worse than mold. But having a non-perfect culture is not the end of the world. We want to see, is it producing heavy amounts of material to feed my animal? Yes or no? And then we have to go back to the drawing board and potentially change some things.
I want to mention just really quick, we have a number of starred questions. We're going to get over to those as we dive further and further into this session here. We've got a comment here. I have recently seen some people using the 3D. What do you think of them? And I think that actually Brad mentioned that they could melt if you use too warm of water. So you've got to be careful with that. But your thoughts on 3D?
3D printed can be good, but again, they're very hard to clean. Every schematic that I've seen thus far, I mean, if you can even call it a schematic, but you guys get my point. The it could work, but also if it's too heavy, when you guys go to tip the cup, it's just going to fall out. So you're going to have to bolt it to the back of the cup. Sometimes like what hornworm breeders use, they do the staple, right? But then you're destroying your 3D printed thing that you're probably going to want to reuse, right? But then when you're cleaning 3D printed stuff, sometimes there's filaments that break off. You guys are really trying to make matrices that have high surface area, but that's very hard to do with even with good 3D printers, and even with good CAD work, right? It's going to be very hard to make a matrix that is going to stay clean, that is able to be cleaned, that doesn't decay very fast, and that won't warp or move around with your cultures. So the reason why Excelsior is so good is because it's very lightweight, but it can be packed densely. So it's perfect. The gravity doesn't affect it the same way. Those are all things to consider.
I think you made a really good point there that I don't want something here that I dump my fruit flies and all of a sudden I've got fruit flies and this big glob of plastic sitting on top of my fruit flies that I want to, or worse, it fits so tight. Let me get it in there. Oh my gosh, I just broke my cup. And now I've got to crack and I've got to start all over again. So some big negatives there. Yeah. DEA, Andrew is asking, have you ever considered microwaving the Excelsior?
Yes, we've tried that as well. It is not perfect because a lot of the mold, yes, it comes from the facilities, but it's also in the air as well. So when you microwave something, you don't usually sterilize it, you sanitize it. There's a difference. And if you're not pulling it out in front of a laminar flow hood or something that's completely sterile, you're going to get rapid colonization of anything that's in the air back on that thing. Because again, Excelsior is a very yummy treat for mold. It's a buffet. It's ready to go. Even if it's dry, which you should really oven bake instead of microwaving, because microwaving doesn't work the same way as we know it. Vibrates molecules inside of so you'd have to wet the Excelsior too, or it would catch on fire. Besides the point. So it creates a panspermian effect that you may not want. But yes, we've tried microwaving and then inoculating with beneficial bacteria and things like that to moderate success. But we're feeling like, the problem now is that our air might be contaminated with all that mold. So that's why we're building a laboratory to literally control sterile airflows through an entire tunnel. It's going to be 900 square feet. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So we have a big project ahead of us. But we do think the original mold spores are coming from, and I've sent it off for testing. Definitely coming back positive with a lot of different mold species. So you can microwave it, of course, in small batches, but you guys have to remember we're doing 200-300 at a time. It's very hard to get that volume fully sanitized, and then in a space where it's not exposed to the air. We don't even have that yet. So that's why we're doing the lab. And I'm doing a lot of culturing at home where I'm seeing better results, but still with the Excelsior, you're still seeing that. We've been using the honeycomb packaging paper, and it's been good, but it dries out so fast. So it's definitely a challenge that we're navigating right now. And I think a lot of other companies are too. You're seeing that a lot because we really do think it's coming from those Excelsior places.
You talk about baking instead of microwaving, and all I can imagine right now is, hello, Alex. Yeah, I tried to bake, and
it's on fire.
I burnt up my house, and Nanette's saying that it's all your fault. So
no, don't, guys. You have to make sure it would be completely saturated through and through the cambium tissue, and then it would have to be a low temperature, long duration kind of thing. And it's again, you would do trays and trays and trays and trays. And then again, you're just putting it out and being like, okay, it's a sterile buffet. Anything that's in the air, come eat this stuff. It's ready to go. It's almost pointless. We've also tried to microwave the cultures as themselves in the microwave, just as they are, and then seeding with the flies. But again, you're still getting some perfect and other ones get way more mold than even before, because you're getting, again, you're seeding with flies that, again, are carrying stuff on the wing buds underneath underneath all the limbs. So you guys know roaches carry a ton of molds even underneath their wings and things like that. Flies do as well. They have a ton of small hairs, and spores just get trapped in those hairs. And then that's how mites get transferred too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
all really good things, really good questions. There's no perfect solutions. So like I said, if you guys have good solutions that work for you, you stick to those. You don't change anything. If paper plates and hidey eye work for you, don't ever change it, because the different things work for different households.
Mm-hmm.
Great points. Now we were talking about the 4 different things involved with culturing. We're moving forward. This is maybe the most important, I'm thinking, and that's the medium. Now, I'm going to talk about the medium specifically in just a second, but I've got to ask this before we even get into the medium. What water do you use? I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, you want to boil your water and sterilize," and hearing some of the things that you just said, I'm wondering if that's really that necessary. Do you use RO water? Do you boil your water? Do you add? I'll hold the next question a little bit later. But
The vinegar
boil RO.
Yeah. So we use RO. But again, it's because we have a big facility, guys. We have 3 dedicated RO units. We produce about 150 gallons per day. Yeah, it's disgusting. We don't even need that much. So we turn them off all the time. I'm just saying capacity wise. So we have plenty of RO. So what we do is we take the RO water, we put it into kettles. We electronically, we have electric kettles. We do boil most of the time. I would say there's almost no difference. The good thing about boiling is it activates the agar. We use agar or agar in our media.
Yeah.
It depends on how you pronounce it. And then we use other congealing agents like gums. So like guar gum, xanthan gum, those kinds of things, which are heat activated. So they do congeal the media. You can use less media, and that's a cost savings. So again, we do it, but I will tell you this. The thing is, you will never have a sterile fruit fly culture because you can't. Fruit flies are living things. You can't sterilize living things unless you kill them. So if you guys sterilize everything else, and then you use anything but flies from a dedicated laboratory, which is what we'll be starting our stock off with when we're ready, and even still, the laboratory, again, you're never going to get a sterile fly culture. You just can't. And because you wouldn't want to. Flies are synergistic with yeasts. So you have to have good production. You need yeasts in your media to produce good flies. So the thing I'm trying to get at is that even if you boil your water, guys, you're sterilizing the media, but then you're just pouring in flies that are full of just molds and different spores and yeasts and bacteria and all this stuff, and you will transfer that into the new culture. And then the key thing, then you have a perfectly sterile environment for those things to rapidly colonize on. So again, it's like you don't need to boil the water unless the directions require it for those congealing agents to activate and some of those ingredients to unlock, different proteins to denature so that they're readily available for absorption. That's a big thing. We don't have time for that conversation, but basically, heat activates certain things, and that may be good for flies. We'll keep it there. And then I can go into it if you want me to.
I know.
Is it better to have like lukewarm water versus
I do it a lot. At my house, I use lukewarm water. I use warm water, so I get some of the activation of the gums. I don't get the full activation of agar. Obviously, you can't unless it's boiling, almost boiling. And then you still get, a good mixable matrix of solution. So you guys don't have to adhere to the boiling water thing. It's not as important as you think it is. If you're using Rapashi, I think that the agar amount is so high that you would need to use boiling water to get the actual product to set. Yeah, and Rapashi is great. I'm not digging on them. I'm really just telling you guys, you have to use boiling water with certain medias. But other medias like my gold formula and stuff, you can use cold water if you want.
I'm going to get into more specifics of the medium in just a second. We're going to
What about
talk
distilled
a
water?
little distilled water, same as RO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Effectively, yes.
It just
How
came
about
up-
vinegar? You know, we were talking about the mold situation, and Brad had a good point that, I'll never find it here. Brad said, if you do
cider
use
vinegar,
vinegar, use
regular
apple
cider.
cider, and vinegar is an acid, it disinfects. Do you use vinegar in your, when you culture fruit flies?
Sometimes it depends because yes, you can add vinegar. The thing is, vinegar is going to lower your pH, and that's going to be your primary defense against molds, right? Because a lot of molds can't handle high acidity environments, but you'd be surprised a lot of them can. There's certain bread molds that go down to pH of 2 that can survive, and flies typically don't like anything less than pH of 4. So if you go down too low, remember we're playing evolution's game here. And we've witnessed this in ours. We started using vinegar on some of the molds we were getting, and we were pounding it with propionates, different types of things that protonate the water. So it's making it more and more acidic. So it's pumping hydrogen ions into the media, and basically over time it acidifies into the soup of acidity. And it was killing our production, but it was also killing the molds until the molds adapted, because you guys have to remember molds, most of them are very fast generational rates. So kind of like bacteria, if they spore, which is usually what you see as mold, you're already done, because that's the fruiting body, right? Because fungi are different, and we don't have to go into it too much, but they have hyphae, which you really don't see. It's like a whitish feathery thing, and then their fruiting body is usually the color. So when you're seeing green mold, that it's too late. Those are the spores. They're thrown out. And fungi are very interesting evolutionarily. They have billions of different genetic copies. Molds are that's why you can't get rid of mold in your house. You can keep trying to kill it, but it will keep evolving. And you're playing this game in a 32-ounce cup, and then you're tilting the flies into a new one. You're artificially selecting for the stronger and stronger and stronger molds until altogether you can't kill them with vinegar. And we got there this year, or last year. We got to a point where we were fighting a bread mold that just eats vinegar for breakfast. We were pouring it in there, and it just made it stronger. I'm not even kidding. It was a type of black, starts with an R, the genus.
Oh.
But anyway, again, you guys have to understand that you're playing God in a jar. So it can work for a while, but if you rely on vinegar too much, you will be selecting for the strongest mold spores over time. So it's good to switch medias completely. You can use chitosan. It's a fungi killing fungus. So it's cool. It attacks other types of fungi. You can use Bacillus subtilis. It's a type of bacteria that establishes and colonizes on surfaces. You can use natamycin. It's an industrial grade mold inhibitor. It's $100 a pound. Good luck with that. I bought that too. We tried. Yeah, I mean, again, so it's wild. I know way too much about mold now. But yeah, so it's while vinegar does work, yes, we use it sometimes. I don't like to rely on anything too much because, again, we don't want to create a super organism that becomes a novel biosecurity risk, because we can, right? It happens in hospitals all the time with MRSA and resistant strains of bacteria and different viruses. Over time, your antibiotics stop working, right? Because it's just evolving constantly. So we have to be aware as a big facility, are we selecting for super strong organisms that we can't fight against?
All I can imagine right now is you walking in one day and it's Little Shop of Horrors. Feed me the big mold. We talked about vinegar. We talked about water. And without giving away your recipe,
sure.
And we're going to talk about Frog Daddy's fruit fly medium in just like 1 minute here. But without giving away your recipe, what are the key ingredients of a fruit fly medium. I've tried to create my own, and I've had mixed luck, and it's just like, I'm not going to waste my time trying to play these. I'm not a cook, so I'm not Walter White. Yeah, I'm not a cook. So I just go out and buy mine because that's easy. My resources are valuable. But what are the key pieces of a fruit fly culture or medium?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, you want like a grain base, right? So grain bases are typically cheap. They're going to be something that has a lot of carbohydrates and usually the usable, like good vitamin profile. Not great, but like any of your oats, potatoes, or rice, or a combination of all three. Hint, hint. That's what we use as our base material. So we use a little bit of all of those grains. Only downside with grains is, of course, grain mites, right? So you can have, if your ingredients aren't clean, if you're not doing screenings, we're very, very careful with mites. We do not mess around with that. So I'm very lucky, praise that I don't have mites, but any herp's the same. Any herp has very clean cultures. They do a similar protocol that I do to prevent mites, which we can talk about later. But the main thing is your grains, right? Those are your complex carbohydrates and your what we call base. So that's going to make up like probably 70, even 80% of some people's. It doesn't make up 80% of ours because we have all the, we have crazy medias. We've got gold and black diamond and all the stupid shit, right?
I'm going to ask you about that in just a second.
And it's not stupid shit, but it's just like, yeah, obviously it's like, yes, there's extra shit in there that doesn't necessarily need to be in there for flies. But yeah, the flies need a good base that is mostly carbohydrates. That's what flies are. That's what they need. They need to break down those sugars. So that's a key ingredient, right? So you have your complex, long-lasting carbohydrate source. Then you have sugars, right? We can lead right into that. So a good sugar base. So most people use like a powdered sugar, or they'll use brown sugars. Any kind of sugar works. I go away from like heavily granulated sugars because they don't dissolve well in water, right? You guys have seen that. You've put, granulated sugar in water and you're like, well, what the heck? It's not doing anything. And that's kind of a key problem. That's why a lot of us use powdered sugar or like brown sugars with molasses. It helps congeal as well. So I use brown sugar and powdered sugar in certain medias. It depends on which one you guys get, but that's another thing. The third thing we use is usually like a yeast. Yeast is your third, like your big three are going to be your base, your sugar, and your yeast. We use a high quality brewer's yeast. That's going to be like 10, 20% sometimes. Up to 20% of the media is going to be pure yeast. And that's crazy. That's not affordable for most people. But we do use that, and two of our medias have 20% or more of yeast in it. And it makes that's kind of my secret weapon, right? But a lot of that's hard to get because brewer's yeast is extremely expensive. Your nutritional yeasts are very expensive. Even for me, you can use nutritional yeast. I saw that pop up. Yes, but again, just mega dollars. You're not getting it by the bulk sack, which are still going to be very expensive. You can substitute, guys, because yeasts are honestly, which ironically speaking, are mostly protein. So high protein, right? So flies need protein. Melanogaster need less protein than hydei. Any of your bigger flies are going to need more protein. If you have house flies, not that you guys would ever cultivate house flies, but there are people that do it, and I've thought about doing it. They're carrion. They like high protein, nasty, rotting meat smell. Like, how do we get around that, right? So a lot of the fly medias have yeast in it. It doesn't have that nasty carrion smell. It's like a kind of a buttery chicken. It's a very interesting smell. So that's why a lot of people in commercial medias, which they won't always tell you, is they're using yeast for the primary protein. You can also use other things like algae. Algae powders are very good, actually. Ironically speaking, that's another secret weapon that I guess ain't so secret anymore. We use spirulina, like in Greenfield Pro. There's spirulina in there, and some other stuff. And those algae are also very high protein, very high B vitamins. So really good. And there's another media that we use non full fat milk protein, so dehydrated milk powders. Those can be very good too, but again, you got to go lighter on those because again, they get rancid. So you can't. There's a balancing act between how good media smells, and so it's tough. Now you've got the big three, right? You've got your base, your sugar, and your yeast. So what after that? What do? Well, you don't have to do much. You could stop there and be done. Most people, though, need some kind of mold inhibitor, right? So people go the natural route. They say, okay, cinnamon. We're going to add cinnamon. It's going to make it smell better. Cinnamon is another key ingredient in almost every media formula out there. I do think it's great. However, sometimes cinnamons can actually come in with mold. I found this out. I tested the products right. They didn't even go into my facility. It just depends because cinnamon's a natural product, right? Comes from a plant that can be infested, so as a natural mold inhibitor, it can also have mold on it. So it's ironic, but for most cases, guys, it's going to be great to use. So a lot of people sprinkle the cinnamon on there. Another great one is methylparaben. However, methylparaben is not very soluble in water. So a lot of the times you have to use alcohols to bring out or propylene glycol or some kind of thing to activate it. So it's not always the best option for people that don't know that. And there's big companies out there that don't want you to know that the mold inhibitor ain't doing nothing if you don't activate it. Because methylparaben and propylparabens, those kind of chemicals are not very soluble in water. However, there are things that you guys can use instead. Potassium sorbate is a great preservative. Again, this is not going to hurt your animals. It's not going to transmute on the fly. The LD50 dose on potassium sorbate for most animals is absolutely asinine. You'd have to force feed it through a syringe directly into your animal's stomach to cause problems. So I promise everything I'm advocating for is safe and is used by top breeders in the nation. Potassium sorbate's great. Calcium propionate or sodium propionate are great because, again, they are going to acidify over time. Potassium, I think, is the faster one, and sodium, I think, is a more delayed. No, have it backwards. Sorry. Sodium is faster. So we use a balance of propionates with methylparaben and with what I just say, potassium sorbate for our complex of mold inhibitor. So we use a lot of mold inhibitors. I know Repashy also, if you guys look at the back of the bottle, it will say all the same things. A lot of commercial level medias will have these ingredients in there for shelf stability. They'll also use citric acid, right, for shelf stability. But you guys are probably not concerned with commercial medias. When you guys are making media, you again want the big three, and then you want cinnamon and probably something else, right? So you can use banana powders, fruit powders, anything that gives nutritional value. So now we'll move on to the nutritional value, which is another big thing. So we have all the macronutrients taken care of. We have the carbohydrates, right, with the base and the sugar. We have the fats sometimes, right, with the milk powders or milk proteins and things that have fat in them. You can use walnuts. If, obviously be aware of allergies. Anything with high fat, you guys can use a little bit of that. I'd make it no more than 10% of the media for sure. Usually 5 to 10%. You want a little bit of fat in the media, but it's not always necessary because if you guys remember from biology, maybe you don't, most animals can convert carbohydrates into fat. So if we eat a lot of carbs, we'll store the extra as fat. The body will go through a process that converts it into fat. So fruit flies actually do the same thing. So even if you guys take the fats out, you have the proteins and you have the carbs. Those are the main things. Then we have the mold inhibitors, right? Whether it's just cinnamon or the industrial grade ones. And then you have something else. So let's get to micronutrients. So the other biggest thing with the micronutrients is you guys should have some kind of fruit powders or something that's going to have a high vitamin mineral profile. The kind of the shot key to this is we add a little bit of Supervite and a couple of other nutrient additives into our fruit fly medias. So we used to use Supervite exclusively. We've kind of moved away now to dosing accurate levels of vitamin A. We use like vitamin A palmitate and stuff like that to kind of supercharge our medias. It's relatively a new thing though. I used to not do it. I used to not put any like vitamin mineral complex in with the media. But I noticed when I started doing it that in the correct dose, now you got to perfect the dose. It's all dose dependent, guys. And it is hard science. This is where the science gets hard. So you don't really have to do this step. This is something you don't need to do for production. But this is why some commercial medias, especially like Rapashi and ours, like perform like, oh, they're like, oh my God, there's so many flies. There's reasons for that because this is my livelihood. So I've done a lot of digging. So we have a vitamin mineral complex that we use now. And so that's really all that's in media, guys. I mean, there are certain medias that have 5 ingredients, 4 ingredients, 5 ingredients. It's not overly complicated, but sometimes the ratios are where people get screwed up. So like I said, not giving away the formulas, but you guys want about 80% to be the base, the first thing we talked about, which is that carbohydrate matrix. You want 80% to be that. You want about like 70, 80%. You want about 10% to be the sugar and the rest of it to be protein. So even if you had those 3 things and then trace amounts of cinnamon, trace amounts of methylparaben, whatever, trace amounts of vitamins, you have that base, sugar and protein structure down. That is what the flies need to actually metabolize to produce. So
for me, this is I'm nerding out on this because I've gone through the process. No, this is great stuff.
You forced me to do this.
This is exactly what I wanted. This is just this is 100% spot on what I was hoping for. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I'm going to go back to when I started this. I did all this and the plastic mesh stuff, and it was like, I can't invest so much time trying to perfect this because I would have really good, and then I'd have really, really, really bad, and now I'm out of fruit flies for a month.
Yep,
completely crashed. So the point that I'm getting to, and bear with me for 2 seconds here. I'm going to see if I can do this. The point is that maybe there's a better way. Maybe the way is to find a good company that has done this and perfected. And I'm not just doing this, to brown nose or anything. This is a proven product. Can you help me understand, though? You have Citrus Pro, Black Diamond, Green, and I think that you have your main product, right?
Yep. So I have 4 medias. There's Citrus Pro, which is the one that we develop and raise the creamsicles on. So it's kind of the companion media for our creamsicle flies, which are a type of, basically a type of glider that is really cool. It's a really great fly. It's kind of in between a Turkish glider and like a flightless fruit fly. So they're high energy, high yield, but they don't fly. They are flightless. And that's the companion media for that. Citrus Pro is also really good because it's really, really supercharged. We use a lot of fruit powders in there. A lot of high quality ingredients go into that. Black Diamond is like, I'm not going to lie. Black Diamond's like my gimmick product. It's not a gimmick. It's a great media, but guys, it sparkles. It's fucking like black sand beach, pina colada fucking essence in there. It's fun, right? You got a fun product. You buy Black Diamond when you're feeling festive beach like. It's great. It's a good product though. It has really high yeast, so that's one of ours with the very high yeast. But it's overshadowed with and it's black. I mean, that's fucking cool, right? But it's overshadowed by a lot of the coconut and stuff that we use, so you don't really smell the yeast.
Okay.
And then the other stuff, the other two medias are probably my best performing, which are the Greenfield Pro, which is right there. The Greenfield Pro is very high yeast, very high performance. It's the one that doesn't smell the best. It's the one that, like, you use when you're like, damn, I need flies, and it'll make the flies. No, you're good. So that media is the one that you use to like make the flies. Like, I need production, I'm gonna get production from Green Fuel. So that's kind of our like supercharge in production form. And then our gold. So our gold's like the gold standard. This is the media that we started with back in the day. It has changed several times. I've had the most problem with gold, and I think it's because now I will explain that statement. My suppliers over the years, my suppliers have changed, right? So I bought a bag of oats, right, back 7 years ago. Well, the bag of oats they ship me now are different, right? So gold has gone through like 3 changes now because something has been wrong with it every time. Like, it's so weird. Like in 2024, I started getting tons of emails and like, oh my God, like gold, nothing's happening. Like, what is going on? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. What do you mean? So people were like, and then I had the old gold and I sold, I liquidated the stock and I got new. I had to build it from the ground up again. I built gold 3 times from the ground up, but every time it's gotten better. So gold is like your industry standard. It's sweet smelling. It's like a chocolate vanilla smell. It's got a medium yeast profile. It's good for both of the flies. It does great with wingless melanogaster, like it's made for melanogaster specifically. And gold's great. It's very versatile. You can make it with cold water. You can make it with warm water. You can boil it. You don't have to boil it. Like Green Fuel, you have to boil. My gold media, you did not have to boil it. So it's great. It's very versatile. It's very easy for people to use. 1/3 cup to media, 1/2 cup water, done. You stick Excelsior and you're done. So it's the most user friendly. You can see by the ratings. It's the high. It's just and it's also the oldest, so the ratings are kind of skewed, right? Because the other medias are within the last 2 years. But yeah, it's a good media. So all my medias are great. Which ones would I recommend the most? Is gold and probably in between Green Fuel and Citrus Pro, but I have all the medias there for a reason. So like, if you guys have questions about the specific nuances of each media, I just recommend reaching out so we don't, have this live go for 3 or 4 hours, because I will talk that long if you let me.
And I would too. But I'm curious. You mentioned the difference in ratings. I don't see a difference. They're all 5 stars.
Okay, yeah, I meant the amount of 5-star ratings.
I know.
I'm sure some people have had problems and they're just nice, and they don't rate it low. There's a lot of that stuff on my website that I think like that people do have problems with, like the moss mix or something, and they're like, oh, it didn't work for me, and I'm like, okay, I'll ship you a new one. Here's what you can do differently, and that probably prevents like a low rating, because it all goes back to customer service, right? If you take care of your people, they'll take care of you. So if you guys and anybody listening, I do mean this in every sense, please reach out. If there's something wrong, we will troubleshoot it together. Like, I do not make perfect products. I don't think a perfect product exists. Correct me if I'm wrong. There is no perfect media. There's no perfect cup. There's no perfect lid, although the lids are pretty close. Guys, again, like I said in the beginning, you find what works for you. If any herp media works for you, do not use my media. Use any herp. If Rapashi works for you, do not use my media. Use Rapashi. It doesn't matter what it is. We want what's best for your animals, and we want to make sure you guys have feeders to feed your animals. Like, I don't care if it's my stuff. It doesn't have to be. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'll just put it.
That's a really good point, but I think that from what I've heard, it seems like Frog Daddies is easier. You've gone through
it's good
trials and tribulations. and you've settled on, you know, a handful of products that work for you guys. So,
Yes.
I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah, they work for us in North Carolina. They may not work for you in North Dakota. You know, it's like it just depends. My medias do best in the Southeast because that's where they're developed. That's the fly, you know, it's all, again, you're playing God in a jar. So every time you use those same flies, you're selecting for the best flies every time on that media. So every time you just strengthen that iteratively. So it sometimes my media doesn't work for people, and that's okay. And that's what I mean. So if it's not working for you guys, you always let me know. If it does, I mean, most people, it works for most people. I would say most people love it. So
Let's talk about the fruit flies. There's two.
I thought that's what we were talking about.
Well, I've been blabbing,
He's like,
and
man,
we've been,
out.
yeah. There's a reason why I've delayed talking about the fruit flies, because I think that these other pieces are very, very important, especially the medium. But we've had some great discussions on the cups and the tops. But talking about the fruit flies, two different types, but maybe there's more. Can you talk about the two different types? And can you talk about maybe the differences between the two? We know size, but I think there's other differences that you kind of talked about already. And are there other types of fruit flies? And maybe throw in there something about wingless versus flightless, blah, blah, blah.
Sure. Yeah, let me lay it on you. So there's absolutely more than two types of fruit flies. However, you're limited to what laboratories have really done, right? So we could almost call Drosophila melanogaster a novel organism. So something that is scientifically relevant, that is used for genetic studies. You have E. coli is another novel, like just something that really is important to the scientific community. So there's a lot of grant money that went into producing fruit flies with all sorts of different mutations. That's where we got, guys, we got lucky. We got really lucky. We did, because there's a lot of cool feeders like fire brats, great example, that didn't get the treatment because there's not a lot of scientific relevance to them. So we'd have probably all types of different fire brats running around it, you know, ones with like one leg or some shit.
No.
So point being,
This big.
yeah, I mean, who knows? Science can do crazy stuff. So the biggest thing is we have two main types, right? So we have the small ones, Drosophila melanogaster, and the bigger ones, which are Drosophila hydei. But we also have things like Bazzotti flies. We have some of the creamsicle ones, which are just I can't remember what mutation it is exactly. But to get different things like the colors, the carotenoid, the mutations to do certain different things. I don't know. I'm tired. It was a long day. But yeah, so we can focus on the two relevant ones. I think is best. The key differences between them are that Drosophila melanogaster are faster producing. Okay, so they're going to produce less biomass per culture than hydei. But the good thing is they do it quickly. So if you need feeders quickly, it takes a while for them to produce. So what's called a fresh culture or a starter culture is when somebody makes up that media that we just talked about, stuffs the Excelsior in, and taps some producing fly from their producing culture, puts it in. That's a fresh starter culture. Well, it's going to take time before you guys can use it unless you're using a couple here and there for mantids, jumping spiders, or fish. If you guys are using them for dart frogs, you can't use them yet. You got to wait. So the good thing is about melanogaster is the wait time is small. You have 7. It's usually not 7. Let's be real. That's the top of the pinnacle. So I would say 10 to 14 days till production time, right? So it depends on the temperature. And if we have time, we can get into that. But the temperature, the hotter it is, the faster they go, right? But you don't want it too hot because at certain degrees, they'll revert back to flyers if they're flightless. So that means they're vestigial winged. And there's a heat regulated protein that starts folding properly if the heat goes, you know, I think it's above like 80 something degrees consistently at embryonic stages to produce flying flies. That's why we use Apterus, what's called the apt gene, It's turned off, I think, or on. Shit, I can't remember at this point. I'm sure I'll remember all this after I'm done talking about it.
That's all right.
And basically, after us are wingless, right? And that's what we use at Frog Daddy because shit, I don't want any wings on my flies. I hate hidey eye. I'm not gonna lie. But I'll just put it this way: I don't want wings on my flies. I don't want my flies to turn back into flying flies. That's not good for business, and it's not good for here. Because heaven forbid, 10,000 square feet of flying flies would be a nightmare.
Oh.
So you've got about 10 to 14 days to production. You've got a good moderate biomass per culture. Good to feed like anywhere between 2 to 4 frogs per culture. And you could feed a lot of fish, mantids, whatever. With the melanogaster. I prefer melanogaster because they are fast. They're going to outcompete the mite cycle. You guys can actually beat mites if you seed them at proper times. There's protocols for it. You guys can message me for the protocols to get your mite cultures to mite free. There is a way to do it. It is a little hard. It requires a little science and sifting maggots and things, but it's possible. Hidey eye, you will never beat the mite cycle because mites will bloom 4 days before hidey eye do. Even at max temperatures to prevent flying at like 82 degrees, I believe, you get production. And I think it's 13 days or 14 days. It's 14 to 21 days, I believe, for hidey eye for production. But at max temperature before they start to fly, it's 14. Mites at that temperature, 11 days. So you're screwed either way. Whereas melanogaster can actually reproduce at maximal temperatures before flying, I think is 8 or 9 days. So you can actually beat mites. However, I would never recommend like seeding with a mite infested culture, even if you are beating them. There's a protocol, like I said, you guys can message me, but it's definitely, you're going to wait a longer time for hidey eye to produce. But again, that biomass payoff is fantastic. So usually when you seed hidey eye, if you seed them relatively heavy with about 30 to 60 individuals in your starter culture from your parent, you're going to get a boom of hundreds, and the biomass just keeps producing. Hidey eye produce for a long time. You can usually get 3 to 4 booms out of them. If you have enough media and you have mite-free cultures again, and that's the hard part. If you have mites, you're not going to be able to do that because mites are going to severely degrade your cultures quickly. And hidey eye are prone to mites, and that's why we really don't do hidey eye here at Frog Daddy. I do them sometimes, and I usually do them at home, but I refuse to bring them into my facility. They harbor mold, they harbor mites. The biomass payout, though, again, is so good for you guys that are actually just using flies to feed, and you're not making this a big part of your business model. They're safe. I would highly recommend hidey eye. The problem is they also crash a little bit more, so they're boom and bust. You look at them wrong, and they don't produce, or a lot of people have problems with hidey eye sometimes, and that's because they need a lot of protein. And I think some of the commercial media is out there, again, because protein's expensive, right? We all know whey protein, any kind of protein is going to be expensive to produce. So a lot of media is out there. I mean, I'm not going to say any in particular, but sometimes there are certain ones that skimp out on protein, and then you don't get a good production of hidey eye. Whereas melanogaster are carb fiends. They don't really need a ton of protein to survive. Which means they're also lower in protein as adults for feeder items. So that's something you guys need to be aware of. If your animal needs a high protein diet, you may need to supplement with higher protein foods. I know a lot of my frogs do benefit from crickets sometimes. I don't usually use crickets, but they would benefit from them. I don't like crickets come with their own set of problems.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
They sure do. We could go on for days about that. But those are the main things, guys. I mean, the main difference between the melanogaster and hidey eye are basically the speed at which they produce and then the biomass ratios. So I think what you guys should do if you're like, oh, which one should I choose? Well, first of all, look at the animal you're trying to feed. Then look at the size of the flies relative, so like make sure head width is appropriate for eating the organism. They are soft bodied, so even small geckos can usually take pretty big hydei right out the gate because they're squishy, right? So we're not feeding hard carapace items like dubia roaches, or even crickets can be considered high chitin mass, which can cause prolapse in certain amphibians for sure. So we really like fruit flies for that.
I like fruit flies because for some of my geckos that are maybe, inch and a half, 2 inches, 2.5 inches even, I'm still feeding some fruit flies. It's like me coming home from, Texas Roadhouse after eating I said this the other day, after eating a 64-ounce steak, I come
Like
home
you've ever done that.
and there's the bowl of chocolate covered peanuts. I'm stuffed, but oh my gosh, they're so small. The peanut,
I can eat a few. Yeah.
I can eat a few.
Dessert stomach.
Exactly. Ooh, piece of candy. So I think the same thing for the fruit flies. I think people neglect feeding smaller insects. I feed big insects, but I also feed fruit flies because of that. It just kind of fills a little void in their stomach, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, it's good to offer a variety. You can never go wrong. Even looking at like calcium and phosphorus ratios, protein ratios of certain feeder items, variety is usually not going to be bad, right? Like 99% of the time, variety is going to be good. And yeah, the small fruit flies, that's primarily what we feed at Frog Daddy. I mean, I have big frogs and I usually use the little melanogaster, but I produce so many of them that it's like, it's not hard to just dose them properly. So Heidi would be nice, but Heidi have their caveats here. And heaven forbid a mite infest, what if I get mites, man? I'm done.
I can't even imagine it.
I can't risk it.
We're going to talk about mites in just a second. Can you give me the temperatures one more time? What's the optimum? And I'm asking selfishly because of me, because you mentioned the Heidi, and if it gets too hot, they start flying. And I keep them in my dubia room, and it does sometimes the temperature jacks up in winter when the furnace goes on. So I've noticed
furnace,
that.
not the thermos.
The furnace.
Not the thermos.
Thank you, teacher Nanette. So help me with the temperatures.
Sure. Yeah. So like your ideal, here's the thing. I would say there's no true ideal. If you're trying to get them from fresh to producing quickly, like let's say you're out of feeders, usually you can bump them to like 82. Okay. I believe 82, it might be, the threshold is definitely higher, but I think consistently at 82 is probably your top. I never go above 78 in my fly room. I typically like to produce 76 to 77 degrees always. 78, I find that like I get faster production, but I also have I typically get more flyers just from random Drosophila that make it into my facility. And they're again, you're causing them to be high activity. So the higher the temperature, the higher activity of every invertebrate in there, right? So you get a couple in there, they're looking around for mates. So if I didn't do a good QC check on my lids, I just have these flies rapidly looking for places to lay. They're way faster. So when I'm making cultures, there's a higher chance of them getting in. I found that like 76, 77 is good for steady production. You don't have any risk of those thermoregulated genes turning on. I mean, again, I'm sure they're very pronounced. They're very specific. And I just can't remember those numbers right now. They're in the 80s somewhere for both species. But yeah, and then again, it's going to be miserable for me to be in there. So why am I going to put it at 82 when I have to make cultures in that room? No way. No shot. I'm a hot guy, like literally hot, and like not, I could be better, but it's just too much. It's miserable. So I keep it around 77. I think that gives you very steady production, no risk, and it mitigates risk in other departments, even molds and things like that. High moisture content.
I'm going to go so far off tangent because when I was doing the thumbnail for this episode, you said that you're a hot guy. I almost pulled the picture of you working out with the, huge biceps. And so,
Dude, I used to yeah, before I met my wife, she makes me super happy, and man, when I'm happy, I just eat. And I
God,
get lazy. I'm
I
always
thought you
here
were going
too.
to say she makes me hot. And I was like, okay, where's that mute button? I was ready to hit it.
We need to
like,
edit
real
that
quick.
out. No, she's the hot one. I got really lucky. I don't know what happened. I can't tell you guys.
You look like a wonderful couple. So to bring the ship back in, low temperature, real quick, low temperature.
Mm-hmm.
What are you not going to drop them down to?
In mid to low 60s. So if you guys ever drop them into the 50s, you can actually like almost completely like shut them down metabolically speaking. If they're close to pupation, they can actually take an extra like 3 days after that if they hit a critical there's a growth period right before they hatch out that if they get basically like stunted, if the temperature drops too low when they're actively pupating, they will stun out, and there's a chance they won't be able to be strong enough to break out of the pupae casing. So you guys never want to drop them into the 50s ever. But even low 60s, I've had significant stalling issues. Even if you bump the temperature back up, like let's say I forgot to turn the heater on and it's winter or whatever, you'll get you can slow them down by days. Just depends on where they're at in the developmental stage. Usually if they're maggots, they're fine, right? If they're not forming pupae casings at that time, but there's a very complex developmental interaction going on when caterpillars turn into butterflies and when flies, maggots turn into flies. If the temperature's not correct during those time frames, it's usually not a bad thing, but they can stall out. So the pupae basically is like, whoa, I'm not safe to pupate. This is dangerous. I'm, so like think you guys think about a butterfly in a chrysalis, right? So it's cold during that time. Sometimes they overwinter in the pupae, some species. That's there to protect them. So if they keep getting signals that, oh my God, it's so cold, they'll stay pupated. And sometimes it depends. Development of flies is really fast, right? Like way different than butterflies, but it's totally different.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
The point is it developmentally stalls them, and that can crash y'all's cultures if you're not careful. Now, if it's already producing, usually that'll just slow them down. For the time being, you bring them back up to temperature, you're good to go. But it's during that critical phase, that developing into producing, that you guys do not want the temperature to drop at all.
So my takeaway with this is, and it leads us right into the issues that can develop with fruit flies, is that I probably had my temperatures a little bit warm this last couple of months. And I started, you take your cup and you dump it into your container,
Dead
and it's
flies.
like, what the?
Oh, flying.
There's
Yeah.
3. I got 3 out of 180. I got 3. So, I think we talked about the temperature and try to keep it in the 76, 77 range.
Yep.
Let's talk about mites, though. How do you, I know it's literally, you talked about how do you get rid of mites, and I bake my culture because then I burn down the house and the mites are gone.
I honestly, it's besides the protocol that you got, again, it's like 3 pages long. So you guys can message me if you have mites. I can walk you through it. But the biggest thing about dealing with mites is getting clean cultures, starting over. If you are battling mites like in an infestation level to where they are outside of the culture cup, they're on surfaces and things like that, you're losing already. So the first line of defense is like diatomaceous earth. You can line your cups, DE. It's messy. It's an aerosolized glass, basically. It cuts it's terrible. Yeah, it is. It's terrible. It does prevent mites from crossing, but it's you guys can do the same thing with like a toxic moat. You can set your culture cups in water with a couple things of Dawn dish soap and perethrin. and that'll kill any mites that get on the surface. That'll break the surface tension. The mites will fall into the water. They'll die. You can also use bleach, but point is, you guys are, if you're making your own cultures, right, and you're seeding from cultures with mites, you get mites. You don't. The eggs, the small mites. I don't know what this. The end stars, the little bitty guys. They're all over the flies. They're in their tracheas too. No, I don't know why I said this. It's not where flies' throats are, or you know what I mean. Where they breathe, they don't breathe through their throats. What the fuck? So
I'll edit that out.
Thank you. The flies, basically, the mites get inside the flies. They can literally, so even if you dust your flies in diatomaceous earth, or you're like trying to use like bug blade or some kind of DE product to like get the mites off the flies, you're still gonna get mites. It is always best to start over and just bite the bullet, get new cultures, disinfect the entire area, do whatever you have to do. Put your producing and your fresh in different places always, just in case you guys do have like late blooming mites and you're producing. It's okay, but you cannot get them near the fresh cultures, and you cannot use late producing cultures to seed a new culture. You always want, as soon as they produce, well, like a day or two after they produce, because males come out first, so you don't want to seed with all males, but usually it's fine. Like a day after you get your boom from your producing culture, you make a new one. Then you don't use that one ever again to seed. You put it away like day 12, day 14, let it live the rest of its life cycle, and you use that one to feed from, but you don't ever use it to seed. So you put your fresh one somewhere else. That'll help you guys out a lot. I see a lot of people stacking the cups fresh and producing and all sorts of different ages together. That's just a mite infestation waiting to happen. If you guys aren't cleaning the outside of your cups, if you're not disinfecting surfaces, it only takes a couple mites, and they could be from your shoes or your shirt or your beard, heaven forbid. Mites are everywhere, guys. They're all over your face. Now, the ones that infect fruit fly cultures, the Demodex aren't going to do anything, but you get my point. They can come in from anywhere. So we want to make sure when you guys are making cultures, you disinfect the surface, you clean everything up with alcohol wipes, some kind of sanitation protocol. Use clean cultures, either from a lab or from a trusted vendor, and then you can seed your cultures. And then if it gets too old, don't use it again. Don't take the risk, because the thing is, people take risks because they're like, oh, well, I don't want to order another culture, or, they're like, oh, I'll save $5, and then they ruin your whole operation. And then you guys might as well just bought producing cultures and never cultured your own, because you just ruined your whole culture kit. Your media is infested now, so you guys do your due diligence. Be proactive. Don't wait until the last minute to make your cultures, and keep your producing away from your fresh. That will save you guys a lot of times. I feel like 90% of the mite infestations happen because people use really late producing cultures, like towards 20 to 30 day developmental, and they're still seeding new ones from that. You can't do that. You can't, because that's how you get mites.
I'm going to tell you folks, there's nothing worse than getting mites. If it's in your fruit fly, if it's in your mealworms, and I tell you what, once you get mites, get right now. Don't go upstairs and grab lunch, or right now take care of it and get them out of the house. Take it.
If you see them, they are everywhere already.
Yeah, everywhere. Yes, get rid of them. Don't think about costs, or I will replace. Get rid of them right now, because they will get into everything. So, we talked about flying. Are there any other issues with fruit flies that you can think of that people might have in their fruit fly cultures?
I think humidity is a big thing. So that's something we've dealt with this year. I swear to you, I'm not lying when I say this. We had 5 solid years of no problems, and 2025 hit like a truck. It's so wild. So cultures can dehydrate if you guys use like what we're encountering right now. We're using that honeycomb paper, but it's winter, and so that the ambient humidity is just generally lower right now than it would be in the spring or summer. And we're finding that our cultures are desiccating faster than the ones that are made with Excelsior. So what's happening is those flies, they need high humidity to pupate effectively and to produce large numbers of your boom, right? So if you're using products like surface area enhancements that aren't giving you guys good humidity retention, it can cause really big problems. Spraying your cultures is a great thing to do. Even if it's just water through the developmental phase. If you guys want to spray your cultures, there's 2 critical times that you could do it. Right when they boom,
Don't open it.
right when they boom is good. And then about 10 days after, about 5 to 10 days before the culture you would think would be going dead, you can spray it again with a little bit of water. And that's all it needs to keep it going sometimes, because you raise that humidity back up, you get it to where the culture would be desiccating or going the other way and getting sloppy. You know, like if it's a hydei and it's getting wet in there, obviously don't spray it. But melanogaster are prone to drying out. So typically, yeah, you guys just eyeball it. If the flies are pupating really low towards the bottom of the cup, that usually means your humidity is too low. If they're pupating all the way up, it's too high. If they're pupating right at a line, about halfway to 75% up the cup, that's where you want the humidity. So you guys can adjust based on where you see the pupation line. That's where you're gonna that's gonna be your cue. And a lot of people don't know that. That's kind of a pro tip. So if you're seeing your pupae line like right next to the media, like we're seeing in the paper cups, that's way too low, guys. You got to bump the humidity up so that the maggots are pupating higher above the media, because they will pile on each other and prevent them from breaking out. And if it's too dry, they may stagnate completely.
I never thought about that. That's such a great point. I never thought, to kind of watch where the
60,
maggots are.
60
Yeah.
to 75, 50 to 75% up the cup, you want the maggots. If it's not up there, it's too dry.
Wow. Yep. What a great point. Any other issues that you can think of? I think the humidity one is just gold.
Yeah, the humidity is a big one. The temperature is a big one. Mites are a big one. But yeah, I mean, besides those 3 things, I think if you guys lock in and you're locking in the humidity, your temperature is very stable, and then you're seeding with mite-free cultures, you should not have trouble making your own flies. And you're going to save a lot of money by doing so. We have kits on our website, but you guys can also, again, this is what I always recommend. This is the last thing I'll say about this, is make sure you have enough to feed your animals. Then do the experiment. Then make your own media. Don't rely on making your own media before you have enough stuff. Buy a culturing kit, make your commercial level medias and your commercial level flies, and then experiment while you have enough stock to feed your animals. The worst thing I see, the biggest mistake I see, is people thinking they can make their own, and then they just go ham into it, and then half their cultures fail, and then they're ordering from me, hey, Alex, can you get flies out next day air? I screwed up all my stuff, which happens. I'm not judging you. I'm not. I promise I've been there. I've needed to order hundreds of cultures before. It happens to the best of us, but just don't make the same mistakes I did when I was younger and just like, oh, I can wing it. I can make my own formulation. And I'll produce my own flies. Get the commercial stuff first, get it to where it's steady and it's working, then branch out and try and save some money that way. Because the worst thing you guys can do is save $1 here and then have $100 crash, and now it's the middle of summer or winter and you can't feed your animal. That's the worst.
I can't emphasize that any more than you just did, Alex. Especially, we do mealworms and crickets, and the last thing that you want to do is, oh my gosh, I just used my last mealworm and it's 98 degrees outside and I can't find one shipper that will ship me mealworms. What am I going to do for 3 weeks without mealworms? So you kind of, if you have more than one or two, even if you have one or two animals, you want to kind of plan this out a
Yes.
little bit.
Make more than you guys need. Make more than you need more often than you think. It's always better to have too much than not enough.
Absolutely.
Because we have to be good stewards to these animals. They rely on us. We cannot slack off and say, okay, I'm going to save $10. It's the same with the supplements. It's the same thing. It's a $12 bottle of Repashy Calcium Plus. How are you going to skimp on that and give your animal MBD for the rest of its life when you should have spent the $12 to save your animal? It's the same with feeders. You guys can't skimp on producing feeders for these animals because they can't take care of themselves. So just do your due diligence with that, please.
Great advice. We can talk about how to harvest fruit flies. We can talk about so many other things with fruit flies. We've gone pretty deep here, but I've already kept you for 2 hours, Alex. I cannot thank you enough for all of your time and answering the questions. I think we've gotten all of the questions answered. Andrew had a question about protein. That's on the internet. Andrew asked me after with an email. I've got some charts that I was going to kind of talk through, but we're kind of getting late here, and you can find that information.
Frank wants 24 hours.
Frank wants 24 hours. Are you good for 24 hours? I'm not.
I won't be able to survive that one. I'm almost at my limit. I woke up at 3:30 this morning.
Oh, good Lord, no.
I know.
And what time is it now by you?
9:30. Man.
9:30.
Typical day.
So for me, pretty much the show is done right about there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I already drank 3 coffees today, which is not good for my heart. So
no,
I'm gonna have to curtail the caffeine.
Where can people find you? Obviously at Frog. I almost said Fruit Daddies. Obviously at Frog Daddy. Frank has shared the link so well during the show. I think he shared it 123 times, if I counted that right. So thank you, Frank, for doing a great job.
I don't think I can do better than that.
Right? No, nobody can do better than Frank. He's amazing.
He's got Instagram. He's got Facebook on here. He's got frogdaddy.net.
There you go. You guys have it all. But yeah,
is that all of them?
Yeah. If I may, I'm going to ask you for a final point, but if I may jump in real quick, the one consistent thing that I keep seeing about Alex and Frog Daddy is obviously the animals and the care of the animals, and animals come first. We could talk fruit flies. We could talk so many different bioactive and I didn't realize until today that plants are your number one seller above some of these other a plethora of things that you sell on Frog Daddies. But the animals come first, and number two is customer service. Sorry, I'm getting that wrong. I see over and over and over these great reviews of you helping people. So I can't answer for everybody, but thank you very much for being such a big part of the community.
Of course, it's very honorable to be in that position to where I once started as a wee lad and looked up on the community so highly, and then just to be in the position where I'm not necessarily on the other end, but just to see that I have become respected. It just blows my mind. It all happens so fast, It's awesome. It's awesome.
How recent did you get married?
So it'll be a year very soon. So
okay, because I've seen congratulations on the wedding a couple times, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's still very, very recent, so still coming off the high of that. So
yeah,
it's been great.
Shane is saying that, and we mentioned your facility, but we didn't really talk much about your store. Shane is saying that he's going to be visiting your shop Saturday with the family. So make sure you lock the doors when you see him coming, because, we don't want Shane, getting in the good places. Just kidding.
Yeah, I'll probably be here Saturday. I will try to take Sunday off, but I'll probably be here Saturday. So I'll see you Saturday.
How cool. Leave us with kind of a tip for everybody, or just a basic community kind of thing, if you don't mind. Philosophy in life.
Yeah, I think that being that this is about fruit flies and feeding, all I can say is just make sure you guys feed your animals. This is one of the biggest things I see in the hobby is that people get busy, right? And they have lives outside of this, and this is my life, so I make sure all my animals eat, but it can be easy to forget. The terrarium's in the corner, it's been there for years, and then some things happen, but again, you are these animals' lifeline, right? So even though it's not a dog, even though it's not your kid, which are both very important things, so is your lizard, right? So is your frog. So we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and making sure there's feeders. If you guys ever have any emergencies and maybe you can't afford it or something like that, I would always put my limbs out to make sure that you guys had food for your animals. So I can't recommend enough to reach out to make sure that we're making sure that we're doing the best we can, because these animals are in their glass boxes. They rely on us every single day. And that's a huge commitment. And I think people minimize that a little too often.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll leave with, again, thank you very much. And viewers, if I could say one thing, there's a lot of companies out there, and we talked about some of the companies a little bit earlier. There's a lot of big companies, and certainly Frog Daddy is getting to be one of the big companies. But Alex coming on a show like this and sharing for flipping 2 hours, support these people, folks. Please, please, please support these people. Keep them in the hobby. Keep them moving forward with some of the projects that they're doing in the community. Support these people, please.
We rely on you guys. I mean, every day I have great customer base, and then a lot of people, it's their first order, and it's really humbling to know that, like, some messages, some days I get it and they're like, oh, I just heard these great things about you, or like, oh, I've always wanted to, meet you in person or something. And I'm just like, oh, it's crazy to me. I'm just a guy, but it's like, it's humbling, it's really great. And we need the support, because there's a lot of places you can go, right? And get maybe similar experiences, maybe not, but we have a really small, tight-knit family here, and we really appreciate everybody's support.
Thank you very much for coming on. This has been invaluable.
Josh Ferris, he's my mycologist now. You guys
How's
know
it going? Hey, Josh, we have another 2 hours. Can you just grab a seat?
No.
He's taking over. I'm going home.
No.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Just ran.
Yeah, exactly. He ran. It's like, I'm so out of here. Get me out of here. Beam me up, Scotty. Thanks, Alex. Thank you very much.
Guys. Y'all have a great
night. Good night, everybody.